Hey, it's John and Mike from brew-juice.com. So tonight we're talking about brewing efficiencies. And John recently purchased a new grain mill and has some questions about what's that going to do for him aside from crushing grain.
That's exactly right. So, you sink all this money into a piece of equipment, you're wondering, well, what is this going to do for me outside of, having a fun toy to play with? So I was trying to figure out a couple of things. Well, one, I think the benefit I can buy grain in bulk, and that's great. But is it going to help me make better beer, I guess is the other question. And then I started delving into thinking about, will I have better efficiency with grains that I mill right before I start to brew, rather than buying pre-milled grains that I get at the store. So I started throwing around terms like brew house efficiency, which I found out from Mike is a larger term for another video, but we're really talking about lautering efficiency. So tell me more about how you can calculate that based on the grains you put into your ton and what you get out.
Right. So every grain, if you want to go into this depth, you can get a spec sheet on the grain that you buy. It's actually tough to get them sometimes as a home brewer unless you're buying, directly from the source. But every grain goes through a test where they crush it super fine and they figure out how much total theoretical extract is there if you were able to pull 100% out of it.
Okay.
So in general, like a lot of two rows, if you put 1 pound in 1 gallon, will give you an OG of like 1037. Some are more like 1033, 35. You can, software, there are certain softwares out there that have them. You can find charts online. But basically what you want to know is there's a theoretical max of gravity you can get out of any particular grain. So in your recipe, you add up how much of every grain you have, what its max is, and you can calculate the number of gravity points in that recipe. Okay. The theoretical max.
Okay. And is this gravity something I take after the mash is done? So that's
right.
Like
so
starting gravity.
So the theoretical is based on your dry grist, right? You know what that is. So you do your mash, and then you draw off your wort, right? And so now you've got this wort. You should know the volume of it, because either you're drawing it into a bucket or you have a cool measuring stick or something as it goes into the kettle. So you know the volume, and then you can take a gravity reading before you start heating it, or as you start heating it. That's how I do it. And now you can look at the total volume and the specific gravity, the SG, of that wort, multiplying those together, basically dropping the 1.0 for like a 1050 wort, and just looking at the 50, multiply that by the 7 gallons, you've got 350 gravity points.
Got it.
And if you knew what your max was, which maybe your max, theoretical max from the recipe was 400 points, then it's 350 divided by 400 times 100, and that's your, what we're going to call lautering efficiency, or your mash efficiency. Right. What's the total extract I could get? How much did I actually get?
Okay, so I've seen those percentages in recipe websites where they say, well, we calculate these recipes based on an efficiency of X%.
Yeah.
And so if you were to, set the recipe to your lautering efficiency, then you could mess around with the
right. If you're looking in a magazine that says 12 pounds of malt at 65% efficiency, but you know that your system runs at 75% efficiency, you're not going to need 12 pounds. You're going to need to dial back, because if you use 12 pounds and you want to hit a 1050 OG, you might end up with like a 1060 OG, and which is fine if you want, but then you need to adjust your hops to make sure the bitterness stays in balance. So that's why paying attention to efficiency is important, so that you can balance your recipes when you're actually doing it. It's one thing for it to be on paper, it's another thing for it to be actually happening in the kettle. Okay,
cool. So I think what I do have is some notes on the specific gravity of my pre-boil volume, using grains that I bought that were pre-milled at the store. And I can compare that to, in a future batch, if I remember to take a specific gravity of my pre-boil volume, compare that, the same recipe, milled at the store grains versus milled at my home grains, and see what the comparison is, and see if I've picked up a few efficiency points, I guess, between what I was able to get bought at the store. So
yeah,
cool. All right, so that makes sense. Let me see if I can do the math. We'll see if I can actually do it. But the other thing is just remembering taking the readings. They usually are pretty good about getting the gravity after the boil. It's the pre-boil one that I don't remember.
But it's possible if you know your volume, post boil and
Yeah.
you get your gravity, the number of total extract points, your total sugar, isn't going to be any different post boil than it was pre boil.
Okay, so it's still calculated.
So you can still figure it out. I mean, the key is though, pre and post boil, you've got to know volume and gravity at both one end. There's 4 things you need to know: volume at the beginning, gravity at the beginning, volume at the end, gravity at the end. If you have 3 of those 4 things, you can calculate the missing factor.
Right on. Yep, that makes sense. So I guess from what you've said is maybe it may not, understanding efficiency may not make my beer taste any better, but at the same time I may be able to save a few bucks if I'm a little more efficient.
Yeah, the reality is, depending on how you control efficiency, you might be able to drive an extra 10% out of your grain. And the reality, if an average batch costs you $40, but you can be 10% more efficient, that's like saving $4 in the batch. It's basically getting a 10% off coupon at your brew shop. Who wouldn't want that? So within limits, within reason of driving your efficiency, there are pros and cons for taste and stuff.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you're at 68% efficiency, finding a way to get up to 78% efficiency or 75% efficiency might save you a few dollars.
Okay. Well, if I brew enough, this mill may just pay for itself.
It probably will.
All right, so that's our long-winded answer on that. I'll let you know how it goes. For John and Mike, brew-juice.com, brew on.
Cheers.